Welcome back to Psychology with Dipali, the best destination for great content in psychology.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Psychology with Dipali. Today, we are going to talk about the defense mechanisms as part of psychoanalytic theory of Freud. So, what we're going to learn about is the key concepts of ego defense mechanisms, the various types of defense mechanisms like repression, projection, denial, reaction formation, rationalization, sublimation, displacement, regression, and introjection. So, what are ego defense mechanisms? According to Freud, most of the behavior that humans show is basically an attempt to deal with or escape from anxiety. So, whatever we do is basically keeping in mind that we need to escape from any kind of anxiety, trauma, or conflicts that we might be having. So, therefore, how the ego deals with the anxiety will largely determine how a person is going to behave. So, Freud believed that people avoid anxiety mainly by developing certain ego defense mechanisms. So, these defense mechanisms try to defend the ego against the awareness of the instinctual needs. So, if you know about it, ego and superego, all the instinctual needs which are repressed and pushed into the unconscious and are a part of the it try to be expressed. But it is the ego which tries to keep the it in check, and therefore anything which will potentially cause anxiety is balanced out by the ego by creating certain ego defense mechanisms. So, if defense mechanisms are therefore a way of reducing anxiety by distortion of reality. So, actually, the situation, if it is realistically handled, it would cause a lot of anxiety. So, these defense mechanisms are used to defend against the anxiety, and therefore they have an adaptive kind of usage. That means it helps the individual to adapt to the environment around us and to help the individual to handle the anxiety. Now, people who use these defense mechanisms to a very large extent, to such an extent that reality is totally or truly distorted, in the long run, will be developing certain kinds of maladjustment or maladjusted behavior and would also therefore lead to abnormal or mentally ill behavior. The first defense mechanism we'll talk about is repression. When in repression, what is happening is that the anxiety provoking behaviors or thoughts that the person has, they are totally dismissed by the unconscious, which means they're totally pushed into the unconscious. So the thoughts or behavior which cause anxiety, these anxiety provoking thoughts or behaviors are dismissed by the unconscious. It's as if these distress causing painful memories, painful traumas, painful emotions are all there in this reservoir, which is our unconscious. Now, when a person therefore represses a feeling or thought or emotion, he or she will totally become unaware of that. So, once it is pushed into the unconscious, even the process of pushing it into the unconscious by repression is something which is automatic and is taking place at the unconscious level only. So, the person is also not aware. So, once that happens, the person is totally unaware of that wish or that feeling or that thought or that trauma. So actions which occur without any kind of conscious understanding, where the person may say, I don't know why I did that, or I don't know why I said that. These kind of statements which a person says would be actually an expression of something which was there in the unconscious, which made the person do something which the person is therefore not aware of. So at that point of time, that repressed feeling or thought or emotion is expressing itself. So, an example of repression would be, let us say, a mother who is unaware of the date or the events surrounding her child's death, because her child's death is a very traumatic, painful experience which she has pushed into the unconscious. She has repressed it totally, and she's unaware of it, and she won't even remember what had happened, how her child had died, and in severe cases, she may not even remember that her child has passed away. Or it could be a woman who is maybe was insulted by somebody, but she has totally repressed the memory of that incident, and she is unable to recall the entire incident and doesn't even remember that she was insulted by somebody. Or a girl who cannot remember her grandfather's fatal heart attack, though she was present at that point of time. Since it is so traumatic and painful, the memory of that event is totally repressed, and she is unaware of that event which has occurred. The next defense mechanism is projection. In projection, people will attribute their own traits or their own unacceptable impulses or feelings or thoughts or motives to other people. So, just like a projector works by projecting an image on a wall or a screen, we are pushing our or putting our own impulses onto others. What we have within us, we are not seeing it as a part of us, we're seeing it in others. So, there is trait attribution or trait projection where we project our own traits onto others, where if, let's say, we are aggressive, we will see others as aggressive. Emotional projection, whatever we are feeling, let's say negative feelings, we project that to others. Motive projection, we attribute our own motives or negative motives to others. And impulse projection, that is whatever is unacceptable to us, all the impulses which are unacceptable to us, we are projecting onto others. So, an example of projection would be aggressive tendencies. So, a person who has a very strong inclination to behave aggressively with others would actually not accept that this kind of aggressive tendency is there within him or her and is going to see it in others. So, he or she will attribute one's own trait of aggressiveness to others and may see other people as acting aggressively towards him or her rather than he or she behaving aggressively towards others. The next defense mechanism is denial. In denial, a person totally refuses to believe or accept an unpleasant reality. So there is some kind of incident or event which might have occurred in reality. The person totally denies it or doesn't accept it. So the person faces a difficult situation or let's say an unpleasant reality. That is the first step. Then the person refuses to believe it or rejects the reality. He totally refuses to accept that something like this or this unpleasant thing has really occurred. The person refuses to accept or acknowledge that this unpleasant event or this anxiety producing experience has occurred and claims that reality doesn't exist. So, this is like, no, this has never happened or this cannot be true, and therefore the person denies it totally, and the person feels an anxiety or there is some kind of anxiety which the person is feeling due to this denial. But even then, in spite of that, the person totally refuses to acknowledge, accept the reality and denies it totally. So there would be examples of denial where, let us say, a person has been given an HIV diagnosis or an AIDS diagnosis, and when the person hears that, he says that no, that cannot be true. It is not something which is it has not happened to me, and what the doctor is saying is wrong, or the person refuses to believe that the smoking that he is indulging in is going to cause a serious health risk, let's say like cancer or academic failure. A person who has failed, a student, might refuse to accept the result and say that no, that cannot happen, and I have passed actually, but somebody is telling me that I have failed. So this failure is not accepted or not acknowledged by the person to protect the self-esteem of the person. Then we have the defense mechanism of reaction formation. In reaction formation, a person defends against anxiety by adopting behaviors that are totally in opposite to what the true feelings of the person is. So, first, the individual might feel certain anxiety due to internal conflicts which are there in the unconscious, and these unconscious desires or impulses will emerge. They try to come out into the conscious awareness. So, to prevent that, the individual will defend against this anxiety by adopting behaviors that are totally in opposite to the true feelings, and the opposite of these true feelings are what is present or which is expressed in the conscious awareness. So what the person is actually feeling is in the unconscious mind of the person, and when these unconscious feelings are trying to be expressed, since they are unacceptable, since they are negative, the person doesn't want to really accept that these feelings are being truly felt by the person. He or she is going to behave in a way which is totally opposite to what these true feelings are. So the conscious behavior will be totally in contrast to the unconscious feelings. So an example of that would be a mother who unconsciously may be hating her child, but in the real life, she may be showering her child with all kinds of, excessive affection, gifts, and displays of warmth. But truly, the person within unconsciously doesn't want the child. So, or there could be an example of a mother of a woman who dislikes her mother-in-law, but she behaves very overly polite to her and behaves with her very positively, which is in total contrast to the real feeling that she has is which is hate towards her mother-in-law. The next defense mechanism is rationalization, where a person tries to make unreasonable feelings or behavior seem reasonable and acceptable. So, what happens is first the person recognizes that there are certain unacceptable feelings that I'm feeling, or certain difficult things which I really need to process. So, the person tries to search for reasons to explain these feelings. Now, when the person is searching for the reasons to explain these feelings, he or she will develop a kind of a seemingly logical explanation or a reason for these true feelings, and the person will present the feelings as something which is rational, something which is having a very valid explanation, but actually it is not so. So therefore, suppose a person who has applied to college for admission is rejected. So the person will explain the rejection as a positive shift to a better fit. So a person who's, let's say, didn't get the admission to the college, she may say that, oh, it's okay that I didn't get it. I am better off by attending this college, which is less competitive and it is more welcoming. So I really don't feel bad that I didn't get admission because I got it in a better place. So they are trying to give a rational explanation to the unacceptable feeling of feeling disappointed. But by giving a rational explanation like this, we are basically protecting our ego. Another example would be rationalizing poor performance with the belief in new tools. Let us say a student who has not been faring well in the exam, he or she will buy a new set of pens and may try to rationalize his behavior by saying that now, once I have these new pens, I'm going to really do well in the exam. So, though the pens do not make actually any difference in the kind of performance to the exam, it is basically the person is trying to give a valid, rational, logical explanation, but actually is unable to really give a true explanation of why he thinks that the pens are going to help him or her to really do well in the exams. So this is similar to what happens, which we call is the sour grapes reaction. This is related to the story we know about the fox and the grapes. The fox tried to reach the grapes since the grapes were very high, and after repeated attempts, he was not able to get the grapes. He said that the grapes are sour and they're not really worth eating. So someone who is, let us say, being passed over for a promotion, he didn't get the promotion that he really wanted. He might rationalize the disappointment by saying that, no, I really didn't want the promotion. If I really had the promotion, then I would have much more responsibility. I would have much more work. I would have to spend long hours working. So I'm glad that I really didn't get it. So actually, there is disappointment, but because the person doesn't want to accept the disappointment of not being considered to be worthy enough for the promotion, he tries to downplay the promotion itself and says that it is something which really was not worth getting in the first place. So the initial feeling of disappointment is there because the promotion was not available. Then the person makes the assertion that the promotion was not desired. It is not something which I really was looking forward to. It is not something worth getting because it would really mean a lot of negative things like hard work, long hours, and extra kind of responsibility, which I really don't want. So I'm better off that I didn't get it. So this process of rationalization is being used to rationalize or justify the disappointment. Then we have sublimation, which is channelizing or redirecting negative emotions and socially unacceptable impulses into a very sociable, acceptable thought process or behavior pattern. So there is initially some kind of experience of negative emotions or let's say negative impulses, then we identify that these negative emotions or impulses are not socially acceptable. So really, if we express these impulses, people are not going to like it, or it is not going to be accepted by society. So we then channelize or redirect these impulses into very socially acceptable impulses or thoughts or behaviors. So we therefore take part in activities which are very constructive, and which are beneficial not only to us but also to society. So therefore, the outcome that we achieve are socially acceptable also, and they are positive also, because we have substituted the strong impulses which were not acceptable into an acceptable form. So from the original form of being unacceptable impulses, now they get converted into acceptable behavior. So an example of this would be, let us say, in sports, where the aggressive impulses which a person might have, excessive aggression, can be transformed into competitive energy, which is constructive and which is socially acceptable too. Or in military service, a person who joins the armed forces could be, doing this same activity of redirecting his or her aggression into disciplined action by becoming a soldier. Or let's say a person's desire for revenge on a drunk driver who may have killed his son. This person, instead of taking revenge directly, which is an unacceptable impulse, which would not be socially acceptable, he will convert it into, mobilizing community support, or trying to create a group for people who have lost their loved ones to drunk driving, and then try to create some kind of social awareness and movement, or try to influence the lawmakers to create laws which would punish such people. The next defense mechanism is displacement. So, in displacement, we are transferring the emotions associated with one particular event or a person to another person, or to another object, or to another situation which is less threatening. So, we initially have certain feelings, maybe negative feelings, but we realize that the target is wrong. We are not able to express those feelings to that person or that target. So we recognize the true source of the feelings, and then we try to locate a safer target or a less threatening target on whom we can express these particular feelings which are negative. So we channelize all the emotion towards this new target, and the person will therefore be able to release his anxiety which had been building up, and this anxiety is now being released on a substitute, because if the person actually expressed his aggression or anxiety or the negative impulses on the original source or the original target, that would be socially unacceptable, or it could lead to negative consequences. So in this way, the feelings are channelized completely. This An example of this would be, let us say, a person who was shouted at work. So the boss has shouted at the employee. Now the employee is feeling a lot of negative impulses like anger, aggression, and would like to maybe, aggressively react to the boss. But since he cannot do that, that would maybe cost him his job. There would be a lot of negative consequences, and it would not be socially appropriate to do so. So therefore, when he comes home, he may bang the door of his home. So that is an object on which he is displacing his aggression. Or he may shout at his wife, or shout at his children, or maybe even shout at his pet if he has a dog, for example. So he is displacing his emotions from the original target to a new target, where the newer target is basically not somebody or something which is going to retaliate. So this is an example of displacement. Then we come to regression. In regression, what is happening is, whatever stressful situation a person is experiencing, it makes the ego go back or revert to an earlier stage of development. So the this ego will go to an earlier stage where it functions as a retreat. It's basically, you're going back psychologically to a time when the world was a much safer place, when the person felt protected, and when the person felt that, the external world was not really going to have an impact on me because I have the protection. So this going back to, reverting to a time when the person feels safe, is what is happening in regression. So that will lead to people exhibiting childish behaviors, of primitive behaviors which he or she would indulge in when he was much younger. And this happens whenever the person is under stress, let us say under some kind of trouble, or there is anxiety, or there is extreme fright. So, an example of regression would be, let us say, children who may be even adolescents, for example, who may suddenly begin to suck their thumb, or a child who has reached already achieved bladder control suddenly starts bedwetting again because the child may be in for some kind of surgery and has to stay in the hospital, or there is some other kind of stressful event which is going on in the child's life. So when this stressful event is not the child is not able to handle this particular stressful event, he or she will regress back to an earlier stage where the he or she felt protected and safer. So childish behaviors and primitive behaviors will be seen in this person, which is an example of regression. And the next defense mechanism is introjection, which we also call identification, where there is some kind of emotional challenge or difficulty which is being faced by the person. When the person is facing this, he or she will now adopt or incorporate within himself the traits of somebody else. So, this traits of somebody else, which may be parents or maybe significant others of the person's life, will be incorporated into the personality of this person, and therefore introjection is the mechanism through which we form our moral standards, our ethical standards, our standards of what is wrong, what is right. And therefore, according to Freud, introjection or identification is the method through which we develop our superego, which is the moral branch of our personality. So, what are the examples of interjection? Let us say a child who is left alone very frequently. Maybe parents are working and the child has to spend quite a lot of time alone at home. He or she may experience fear and seeks comfort. So, the child may be, mimicking his mom or his mother to feel or to become his mother, basically, to sort of comfort himself or to soothe himself, just as his mother would soothe him. And therefore, to feel secure and safe, this kind of, incorporating the traits of his mother's behavior into his own personality would be an example of interjection. And you may see this, for example, where the child may be playing with dolls and will tell the dolls, don't be scared, or telling the toy animals or stuffed animals, don't be afraid, I am here. Basically, the person is soothing himself by using the same statements which maybe his mother would be telling him whenever he feels scared. So when the mother is not present now in this situation, he is incorporating her behavior, her traits into his or her personality. Or it could be an example of an older child, maybe a teenager or an adolescent, who emulates his favorite star or musician or sports person or any particular person whom he idolizes. This is basically in an effort to establish one's own identity. So the identity formation which takes place in adolescence is also done through this process of introjection, where the person develops a sense of self through imitation of other people's behaviors. So the key concepts of ego defense mechanisms that we discussed led us to the defense mechanisms of repression, projection, denial, reaction formation, rationalization, sublimation, displacement, regression, and introjection. So do share, like, and subscribe to my channel, and do comment on how you're liking my videos, and let me know which kind of videos I would bring to you in the future. So that's all from my end now. See you very soon.